Good morning. How have you been? Good morning. I have so many pieces of music in my head playing at the same time. I'd love to share with you some of them. Oh well, all musicians do. Sometimes my improvisations are sort of a condensed version of many other pieces that are by other composers. Through my experience or perhaps my way of expressing the yeah the intent in it. That's where the thin line between improvisation and interpretation come to play. It's a confusion that is understood by the fact that those who play what's written are not those who play what they make up. But if those who play what they make up corresponds to the style, to the aesthetic of the pieces that those who play by reciting the text, it's like going a bit further in what already exists, telling with your own words a story that others already said. So if you write a love, let's say, novel, you'll have some elements that are in every other love novels. You could insist on jealousy, or you could insist on passion, or you could insist on intensity, or you can insist on some kind of irony about the reproductive patterns of human nature's expectations and disappointments. Same way, I can say, yes, I will play an adagio, an andante, a theme and variations, perhaps a lament, possibly a fugue. Why not something with imitations like a chorale, or simply a melody with an accompaniment? Sometimes it doesn't have to be complex in the texture to be intense in the meaning of its expression. And then, of course, there's always this problem that stays under the text, which says, hey, this already exists. Yeah, but not quite like that. So perhaps in one way or another, every love novel is a variation on the same theme. Perhaps it's the way it's said that is interesting rather than what is said. Because you could say, oh, but there's nothing new since beginning of humanity telling itself, its passions, its intensities, its weaknesses, its yeah. I find it fascinating because ultimately what makes us unique is not that we are different, is that have the capacity to think about, reflect about who we are and what we do, how we react, and how we bring things to be. And if we have the humility to accept that it has been done before, it shouldn't be a auto-censorship to not attempt to do it. I have incredible pleasure as a performer, joy, drive, appetite to play music for you by a Schumann, a Bartok, a whoever, not only whoever, in fact, the ones who really mean to me. And it could vary within time periods. But it's true that there are certain things that I feel like I can express more freely, because if I improvise in this or that style genre, I can go further in one aspect that the composer didn't for his own or her own choice of ways, and that's fine. Not everybody should be creative, and not everybody should be forbidden from creating. In other words, creating shouldn't be considered a lesser art than reproducing just because it is on the same style. And so ultimately, we bring in the human experience that is constantly renewed through generations our own contribution to reflect upon ourselves and our behavior, our humanity, our personalities that express differently these elements. Of course, philosophers think theater play authors are very important because they describe through their plays that can become films or video games or whichever form it takes. They express, they really do express the what animates our contemporaries, how we deal with the eternal of hope, love, despair, jealousy, disappointment, anger, revolt, drive, appetite, desire, um, elegance, kindness, tenderness, uh, and perhaps all of the above might sound as it is. It sounds very contradictory because you could say, oh, no, to be virtuous will be only one thing, or two, to be less virtuous, we're going to be only the other terrible things, and say, oh, we're terrible as a species, as a. Yeah, especially when we are cruel to each other or cruel to other species or cruel to the nature. Though, of course, that's exactly where I find that we can contribute to this reflection upon ourselves, our finitude, our exactitude, our desire for precision through science, through statistics, through understanding the complexity of things that we generate or that happen besides our will. And so, yes, at the end of it, I find that it's healthy to re explore our human nature's purpose as seen by ourselves and our contemporaries. The analogies with nature, the analogies with other species, the analogies with all kinds of ways of belonging to the ecosystem in which we are. What is intelligent life? How precious is it? How unbelievably diverse and complex is it through the billions of species, present or past, unfortunately for most, I guess. It's a cycle of things. And at which level, at which scale can we even think without to get in rough conclusions or lost hopes or despair or possibly anger? Perhaps most of the reflective situations that are given for us to reflect upon are so much wider than our capacity to comprehend them, though we have the capacity to question ourselves without finding the ways to answer ourselves, finitude, afterlife, origin of life, purpose of life, existence of life in other places, in which form and what defines it. So we can say, by analogy, the existence of a style, of a genre, the information about the composer who, in music, established this a groundbreaking situation where you say a Stravinsky influenced, a Debussy influenced, in its day Frescobaldi influenced, in a way Beethoven influenced a lot. I would say this kind of musical power stations, they really, really, really did powerfully influence a lot. Perhaps without them, for sure, these very few, like almost randomly, but factually, in my opinion, strongly representing innovation and influence over others, artists, creators rather, yes, they greatly changed the way perhaps the musical stylistic evolution, if any of it's evolution or just some kind of a perhaps erratic movement. Um, but regardless which way we define it or we want to think of it, he would have gone somewhere else differently. If Schubert got older and wrote something atonal before Schoenberg, if Mozart was older and in his older age musically sorry, expressed some kind of completely different paradigm of what opera is and what the necessity of it is. And then, of course, if some of the artists became chronologically at an age where they could comprehend, which is another story about the human nature and its and the human nature's cerebral capacity to understand the technological advance, how they would have taken advance. I mean, it's totally chronologically idiotic of mine to say that, but I often think, hey, if Mozart was alive in cinema time, he might have written amazing music for movies. And in his time, he wrote amazing movies. Sorry, that's a Freudian slip. Music for operas, which was the movies of the day in a sense. It was the art form that brought in all the trades together: the theater, the dance, the singing, the set making, the storytelling, the opera, which in Italian means work, literally the work that the combination of work. So I know it's probably useless to even mention it because since it's not chronologically possible, we would never know. I only extrapolate because I imagine. And I'm sure most of us can think this way about scientists with some certain advance of science, how they would have rethought their groundbreaking discoveries, which could be in part questioned today factually or proven by their intuition more than by their um, empirical proof in their own time. The cosmology, the understanding of the movement of the planets or the universe, extraction, retraction, contraction, the concept of a black hole, all these things which escape to most humans' understanding on our ground level of thinking, being, possibly understanding, compared to some higher, like, elevated capacity of thinking minds who think at a global level or at an astronomical level. But ultimately, what do we think about other planets? Colonizing, discovering, just going and hoping to find something that, I don't know. I feel like we are doing the same thing, variation of the same theme. That's what we did with different continents. Now we'll do with different planets if we can technologically. Does it mean that the technology that would allow to do genetic modification needs to be done if it's medically progress to be able to produce things that we couldn't do before in terms of treatment or genetic um, progress or regress according to people's opinions, especially according to people's faiths or beliefs? Difficult to know. Music is a very beautiful language, in my opinion. Of course, I'd say that. I am subjective, right? Because it is not a language of a given human species. It's sort of like carries some universality in the way it touches our psyche. Especially for those who are not trained to be musicians or to appreciate music, who don't know what a sonata form is, what E flat major is compared to D sharp major. Like I don't know many things about, if not all things, about scientific situations regarding blood types, medical, psychological, mental conditions, the system of the nervous system of the human body. That's why you have these amazing specialists, these amazing people who understand, who know, and who think, and who can, with their general culture, evaluate these different aspects of the being, the intelligent being, whatever that means, right? And I find that music talks to a level of our capacity of comprehension that does not go into direct conflict with our ways. Of course, I speak about music, well, people call it classical. I don't like that because I think it's just a style. It's not a definition for the whole reflective music, music that brings you to question your own being while listening to it, because it naturally brings you to reflect upon yourself, upon all what you are, or what you become, or what you were, what you want to become. Um, of course, you have music that is mostly intended to be naturally, functionally so entertaining, backgrounding other things, and that's fine. That's exactly what pop music is for in popular music. Um, we all need different types of um, psychological moments in our lives to react, to relax, to concentrate, to enjoy or to reflect, to hope or to regret, to have moments for nostalgia and moments for forward driven convictions, and then time to come back on those convictions and say, I was wrong to think so, because in fact now I understand better how things really become. And you can do that through a harmony treatise or contrapoint treatise, and you can learn how things led from one thing to another in the harmonic language. And that gives you a perspective, just like a historian can learn how things brought societies to go from one fear to another, from a religion to a plague, or a combination of things that scared people with astronomic facts and eclipses, and then, in fact, human nature's deep fear that brought them to wars and to disrespects, while wanting to respect their opinion or their desire or their people or their possessions in order to get others. So it's about ruling, possessing, enjoying some kind of a temporary kingdom of this during this transitory time period between birth and death. And the more they realize the finitude, the more they can become unwise or unphilosophical and uncompassionate. And I find that reflective music helps a lot deal with grief upon loss, It can help a lot um, with sheer jubilation of the soul when we feel like we have an unadulterated joy and happiness. So it's a soundtrack of our psychological life. It doesn't say specifically things, except perhaps some numerical factors, like when you do something through a system of musical language in order to develop a musical language based on a specific element, let's say the modal usage, or perhaps the octotonic usage, or the microtone, atonal. It becomes a proof that through a certain restraint or constraint, well, yeah, full tone scale, a chromatic scale, it leads you to express things in ways that you find they're more meaningful. In Bach's time, when Zilberman, his organ builder friend and music tuner for the instruments, came up, or is like Haydn for the sonata, I guess Silverman for the well-tempered tuning, are awarded having invented it. Perhaps they didn't, perhaps they perfected it, but we sort of, like for Alberti's bass, we attribute it to Alberti, we attribute the accompaniment pattern to Alberti, therefore we'll attribute the, the tuning to Zilberman. And to reach these unisons, in order to play in every tonality, sacrificing the perfect thirds or major thirds in order to shrink them by some percentage of beats, was to reach a certain universality of the performance on a single keyboard in keys in which you didn't go usually. So in a way, musically, that is part of a evolution towards an exploration. Now, was it necessary? Did it make beautiful music? Is Bach's Prelude Fugue in the unusual key for then, therefore, in the well-tempered clavier, representing the amalgamation of this ideology of playing in the different keys that were less played on before because you didn't tune in D sharp minor or G sharp minor or B flat minor? Are they more beautiful than the Prelude Fugues, which are in the, let's say, traditional A minor, E minor, or C minor? Probably not. Probably Bach wanted to prove that, hey, that can be, of course, already before him. Caspar Fischer in Ariadne Musica had also done some Prelude and Fugues in more tonalities, perhaps not all chromatic tonalities as Bach did, and in both books, twice everything. But so what was the purpose? Is it because it's well-tempered that is beautiful and therefore bringing us to play in keys we're not used to hear music? Or play, or read, or understand, or be as comfortable as in other tonalities? Or is it that that universality of the tuning gave birth to capacities to hear music through modulations and ways to organize effects of expression that couldn't be reached before, but then some of the ones from before are lost after that? For instance, doing dramatic modulation in a key where you know it will beat and sound beating in the terms of the resonance of the sound, of the chordal progression when you go in a tonality in which your harpsichord is not tuned to go in. Then you create a sense of emotion, you create, in fact, with the tuning, an effect of dramatic, sorrowful, or whatever element. So it's what you lose on one side in terms of the expression through the technique of the day, you gain differently, but you lose also what in part you gain in the other side of things. So if the tuning was, for the well-tempered clavier, tuning was determining factor of a before and an after, and then if the fortepiano replacing the harpsichord is a sound production, let less tuning of the instrument's length of sound from hit compared to plucked string, if afterwards the way of understanding the combination of the sounds in dissonances and consonances lost their meaning compared to the style, where dissonances become consonant because there is no more tension release necessity in the harmonic sense of the word, like vowels and consonants. If you only have vowels, you don't need consonants. In fact, you need a combination to create the necessity of a taste for it. So they have major and minor for moods, but then it's more subtle than that. And then you have formal organization of your thoughts in order to present this and that thematic material, and then you develop it by chopping it in pieces, organizing it so that it can combine itself with the contrasting second theme, which was originated accordingly to Haydn, and then it developed to points where they rejected Haydn by writing sonatas that have nothing to do with that form. But it was originally a point of view of a man-made organization over chaos of nature. That's basically what it was. And the fugues and the polyphony and the organization of cohabitation of sounds and their harmonious move and the melodic organization of the voices, either sung, either played, either heard, either implemented through wind or string instruments or the piano itself, regardless of the decay of the tone. All these are human nature, human brain, human desire to, if not contribute, because that sounds very much like postscriptum, but develop, if not involve themselves into doing something that either was not done, either was not done quite that way. And so it comes to the point of the early conversation situation in my monologue, in fact, is that we should accept that we do variations on the same theme of life's basic passions that drive us and that bring us to express ourselves through art in order to express our behavior as humans when faced with strong emotions of life, love, death, hope, and despair and jealousies. In fact, all of them are combined or come in a consequence of the one or the other into the other. And so I personally accept as a creator, and I'm not a creator, it's a very strong word, let's say, as somebody who likes to explore the different elements of the ways I can express myself through an instrument, besides playing what the others expressed, which I think is essential, to also do what goes through my own funnel, my own psyche in music. Doesn't reject nor pretend to be better, more, further, and more modern. Of course, mine is not. Some are, not mine. But perhaps in a subtle way they are. Not only in the obvious way when you say, I reject this or that, and I'm going to create a new language, a new alphabet, and I'm going to change the order of things in order to restart from the ground up a new way of hearing music, or a way of organizing tones, and a way of desiccating the harmonics in their natural order and organizing them in ways that I obtain a variation in the sounds I get. So the question is, when you can make all that in a scientific quasi way, what does it bring you, or where does it bring you to express some kind of necessity to express something in you, which is not only the technique, but through the technique, not because of the technique. And if you invent a new technique, is it invented in order to serve a purpose, or is it invented to serve ambition? And that is possibly very important to know, because ambition is what drives humanity, no matter what you say. And it could be positive and negative. But I find that music making remains something that people in general associate, as I said earlier, to entertaining, to accompanying stages of life, funeral, marriage, birthday, party, dancing, socializing, singing, combining, singing together, or listening to music for good feel when they drive their car, or when they fly their plane, or when they jog to keep their body in shape. So there are necessities to consumption of music. And consumption of music means that we have, for different moments of our lives, different needs of music. Of course, today we can stock it up in all kinds of recording systems. In the past, it had to be constantly recomposed from scratch and reperformed, and then vanished and restarted. I find that ephemeral live performance to be one of the most touching moments, because while it's ephemeral, it has the capacity to stay forever in our hearts, like a dear moment. Oh my God, what a concert I attended. I was so emotional. And then the person who played moved me even more, and it helped me cope with my own things in life. You can think that as a listener. And then if you listen objectively to the recording of the performance compared to other performances of the piece, or even by the same performer or others, you can objectively say, oh, well, it wasn't that good after all, for this or that reasons. But to me that day, it meant so much. Because somehow music is food for our soul, it's food for our thoughts, it's food for our intellect. Music is food for our soul. I think in many ways it contributes to have this consumption of ourselves. We consume ourselves through this. And I find that contributing to it by writing a piece that could help people or humanity, or one human, or perhaps a pet, or perhaps, I don't know, it doesn't have to be human per se. Just see how in the celestial organization of things, the plants, the sun, the photosynthesis, all this has an aesthetic to our romanticized view of perhaps mind, for sure, of nature, which is not only that, it's also what we extract of it, and what we need from it, and what we use from it. So it's not all far from being dolce and tender, but there is something about the analogy that we make with our psyche, our capacity to express tenderness or excitement, anger or jealousy, and we look at it and we say, oh, how beautiful sunset, oh, how beautiful sun rays on these leaves, and oh, how beautiful morning. And somehow, inconsciently or consciously, we connect it to our hope is the beginning of the day, or its sunset is the end of the day. So there is an analogy with life, beginning and end. Not every day, not every time, not necessarily even at all, perhaps. You can just get next to it and not even think about it. But some pieces of music can bring you to such moments, such connections with nature and light and darkness and rain and drops. And I find that probably that's why there is a sense of consolation or of yeah, I find that solace in some aspects of nature when it's not harsh for human. But regardless, it's not made for human. We are with it. We are in it. And not all compositions of music are made for everybody. Perhaps exactly why music today is more organized by genres that are mostly the entertaining genres that bring through pulse and rhythm, excitement to our psyche, like people like to watch scary movies as if life doesn't scare them enough, or perhaps because it does, it exercises their fears. So, same way you can want to listen to music that constantly pumps up your energy through rhythmic pulse more than harmony or melody or even lyrics. And that gives you energy to drive, to walk, to jog, to work, to exercise, to develop your muscles, to do something of your life, to do something of your body, to do something hopefully of your soul, which is why I so much think that music is a language for the soul food. And I find sad when musicians consider music more as a technique, which it is, but not only. It has some kind of capacity to bring us closer to our defeating of fear. So people say I wake up and I listen to a piece by, I don't know, perhaps Johann Christian Bach, Mozart, and I'm not in their time period and I'm not in their uh, mindset, inevitably, because we're centuries away, countries away, times away, places away, technology away. But then we connect to something universal that it means to us so much. Even if we are not at all connected the way they were with their own music in their own time when it was present music. Today's past music, but in our present, still very relevant, so relevant to our human being, our human exercising, our human um, making of everything. And so we can associate music with nature, music with food, music with love, music with feelings, music with experience of soulful experience, religious experience. Yeah. In fact, music is so more universal than only a technique, or rather, through the technique, you can reach this universality that you can call artistry for those who consider music as an art form, which it is, but the technique is the one that leads to it. Have to learn about discipline, organization, order of things, how to organize a structure, how to organize an interpretation, how to build an ephemeral structure while you perform it or while you invent it, how it becomes more clear and it almost you can capture what is uncapturable, like soul. You don't, but you feel like you can at least perhaps feel the contours of it. Of course, human beings can be the best and the worst of everything to each other and to themselves and to everything around. And I find that some of the reflective music helps us become if not more virtuous, that would be too much idealistic and naive. But at least, if not virtuous, at least it teaches us something about balance, order, um, harmony rather than balance and order. Harmony, or what we consider to be harmony. As I said, the dissonances, of course, were different in different time periods, and consonances are different meaning. So we hear things with different sense for those elements. But it does help us as humans to be, if not better, at least think, feel, organize, and spiritually pump up us to put us in the best dispositions to do what we do, or think what we think, or build what we build, or contribute what we contribute, or organize what we organize, imagine what we imagine, and hopefully all that in the positive way and not only negative, in order to own, rule, and fear by fear, rather by conviction, by a sense of, yeah, compassion, or capacity to be reflecting on your own condition, perhaps with cruelty and not sugarcoating the facts, but finding ways to cope with them and say, there must be a way to make the meaningful passing through from birth to death that is contributing to others, retrieving something from that contribution, how much of what, and that is all about human nature ultimately, and the societal organizations and the ways we value things differently from one or another culture, society, time period, like everything. And music through those times seems to be more universal, since we can enjoy 16th, 17th century music, of course, for what it is, but we can still find relevance to our psyche of today through the filter of it. As well as of the 18th and 19th century, etc. Perhaps less of the 21st, paradoxically, where we seem to have people going in directions of our musical exploration that puzzle us at best, or upset us at worst, or get us angry sometimes. Perhaps because of disbelief, because of lack of capacity to understand, or to even wish to understand. Perhaps it just rubs us in the wrong direction of our soul, of our psyche, of our emotion, of our even intellect. You know, I think that this is the main problem, is that we can be so much more connected with music of a distant past than with music of our day. And music of our day is a multitude, it's not one, it's so many. We don't have one genre, one style, one school, one language, one grammar. We have so many. For the popular music, not so. But for the reflective music, it's at a loss. There are so many that we cannot enjoy or understand or live them or immerse in them unless we learn and study them, which takes longer than it takes to even explore a piece. So let less a language in order to enter into the piece. So people give up. Or then you have the niches of those who are very specialized in specific, you know, the minimalists, the atonalists, the microtonalists, the serialists, all kind of ists. How many treasures are lost for our understanding, or how many fake music is there to impress us when we don't have the capacity to connect to it other than by admiration or intimidation. And strangely, even if the genre, the style of some ancient music is opaque to some of us, we manage to connect to it in our reality of the day compared to the one of when the music was made for, during at least, not for obviously, because it's made for us too, after all. How to connect to the universality of our own time's multitude of musical expressions for reflective classical music of the 21st century, in plural, obviously, because there is no more common language or grammar to express it. The happy few will enjoy some, understand a few, hardly share much because it sounds random or unconnected to the way we connect to pieces of the past even today. So we don't see it slips away from us, and we are lost. We are disappointed, and we give up. Some performers are champions of it and bring so much more. It's really important to take that in account. The pioneering of interpreters of music that is not necessarily the one that people usually listen to because they don't know how to connect to it. And if a performer can be a real ambassador by conviction of a given genre style, which will bring people to get enthused for it by bringing them to enjoy it from different perspectives than the one they have when they listen to Beethoven or Mozart, that would be marvelous. That would be fantastic. That would be wow. Wouldn't it? It's always about musical food for thought.